Welcome to Groundwork, where we cover the people and companies building the most interesting ecosystems in the world. My name's Ty Rattigan. I'm your host, and I am very pleased to invite my friend and former colleague here, Forrest Underwood, who's going to join us. And Forrest, just to start kicking things off, I would love for you to just tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was awesome meeting you in Silicon Valley in 2020, right before the pandemic, as an Air Force pilot doing a venture fellowship, trying to figure out how to bring new and innovative solutions to the Department of Defense. I spent a career as a special operations pilot all over the world, flying in combat. And we realized that we had some really unique problems that the defense industrial base was not going to be able to solve. So we were looking for innovative solutions, and we got the bright idea to go out to Silicon Valley and talk to kind of the foremost innovators on how they might solve some of these challenges. So I was lucky enough to get paired up with you at GGV, and I spent 2 months learning about venture capital and learning about startups and meeting with founders. And it was really incredible to realize that it's not just Navy SEALs and Green Berets that are these small elite teams of people solving really hard problems. That these startup founders are staring at the mountain every day trying to solve this like almost unsolvable problem, but doing it with tons of vigor. And and the people, of course, are incredibly bright. So it was inspiring, so much so that I decided to leave the active duty and leave the flying behind, as fun as it was, and join a defense tech startup at the time. It was a Series B company called Shield AI, and I over the 2 years I spent with them, we went from Series B to Series E.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got to build a prototype business unit there, which was really exciting. From there, I got recruited to a company called True Anomaly at the seed stage, pre-product, pre-revenue. And I started as the business development guy, but I was had some unique startup experience, so I got promoted to the C-suite almost immediately, and got to lead as the chief growth officer there for a year, going from C to Series B in 12 months, which was almost as insane as before. And then we had a baby, so I decided to take some time off, which has been great. But I started getting all this inbound from founders and from VCs saying, hey, there's this moment. It seems like defense tech is huge, but it's so hard. Can you help some of our companies? So now I work with founders who want to go to market in defense, help them make sense of it, and also be successful.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, I had such a great time getting to work with you. And I remember it was very much hey, like I've got as much, if not more, to learn from you than I have to impart knowledge on you, which it was like a great exchange, which wasn't something I was expecting to get into. And so, and was able to make a lifelong friend in the process as well, which is very, very cool. And so, there's a million different places that we could start with this conversation because I think it's so interesting. I think one of the things I'd just love to chat about first, because a lot of people probably don't realize this. But so I was reading the book Skunk Works, the book about Lockheed's Skunk Works, and it was really clear to me that even at that time, like kind of the startup mentality was like really in they were like hacking things together, and they were like doing stuff even at that time that was like very startup-esque. And that's where a lot of the smart engineers and people that would be at your early stage startups today were going, like brilliant physicists and computer scientists and everything else were ending up at these types of companies. And so, yeah, I think the industry doesn't get enough of the credit that it deserves for kind of funding a lot. If you think about ARPA and DARPA and like where a lot of like tech innovation comes from, like a lot of it comes from defense to start with. And so I'd love to just like hear about, because obviously like if people who have done their research, they're aware of that. If they haven't done their research, I recommend reading into the stuff if you want to figure out how the internet came about, or like pretty much anything that we use today, probably started with defense funding. But like, tell me what it was like then to kind of get the tap to go and work on this this initiative to go and spend time in Silicon Valley in a venture fund, like working with someone like me who has no idea at all what you've been going through in the past.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience because a guy named Mike Slaw runs a company called Shift, and he got put on contract to facilitate this fellowship. And at the time, his business was getting veterans of the military into high tech jobs. And they were saying, "Hey, since you know all these tech companies and you know all these venture capitalists, could you help us with this like short, intense innovation experience where we can bring people, have them absorb, and then bring them back to share those lessons?" And that's what the SOCOM Special Operations Command model is. It's like, it's going to be very intense. It's going to be very, very focused. We have the stakes are very high, so we need to get some output. We need to get some high ROI here. And Mike basically sent me. He like came up with a one pager, sent it to me, and he said, "Hey, do you think your boss would approve this?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." like, there's no way. Like, this isn't real. No one's heard of this. No one's seen this. He goes, "I'm telling you, this is going to absolutely change the game." And he was right. And Mike's the kind of visionary founder that birthed the Defense Ventures program and this fellowship of 500 fellows have gone through now. Over 150 VCs and startups have done it. And it was cool to be part of the inaugural cohort and then to help scale that program as it continued. But I think the most impactful part of the experience was at the time you don't realize it. You don't realize how special it is because you're just one person and you're going into this like totally unique environment. Like I didn't even know how to spell VC, much less understand startups and how it all works. But I found that it's not as complicated as people make it sound. It's actually very simple. It's like raise money, hire the best people you can afford, race as fast as you can to build a product, and hopefully deliver it before you run out of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's the name of the game. So not only did I realize that there's incredible talent out there, there's people who want to go solve really hard problems, and the DoD is chock full of those. So it was really a great match.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think so. Yeah, the folks at Shift are doing an incredible job. I remember just having such a good impression of their program, and so I recommend people check them out. So tell me a little bit about transitioning from transitioning from that world to then going in and working at Shield and like business development at Shield and what you were working on there. And I think also what would be helpful to touch on is like even when you were actually at GGV, and let's reverse the order actually. So when you were working together with me at GGV, there was some incredibly valuable experience that you were able to impart upon founders in conversations, especially given our customer base or our portfolio was like quite cybersecurity oriented. People were like really interested in, hey, how can I have conversations with the government? And I think that experience probably spurred the shift into like you realizing that you had some really like valuable experience to share, probably spurred some of the move into working at Shield. So I'd love to hear about if you could just kind of time travel and talk a little bit about the time that you spent with some founders and like what your observations were around like either knowledge gaps that they had or even just like interesting anecdotes that you were able to share with them for them to use in their day to day.
Yeah, I think one of the things that dawned on me once I was able to sit and talk to some of these founders is that like cybersecurity is not different in the DoD and in commercial. Like there's a ubiquitous set of cybersecurity challenges, and everyone's trying to work as fast as they can to solve it. And the defense industry is saying like, oh well, it's like this is unique to us, and like we want industry, but we can only take the Palo Alto Networks level like solutions, but they don't have all the things that we need, and we don't really know how to talk to these startups. Therefore, we sort of discount them. And the startups are saying, well, we want to sell to the enterprise. We don't really know how to deal with defense. So we just sort of discount them. And I realized that both of these people actually were very complementary, but they never viewed themselves as partners, and therefore never worked together. So when I was, and it was almost like a simple kind of translation and familiarization issue. So I was able to kind of take the commercial perspective and the DoD perspective, do the translation, put them together, and then all of a sudden the light bulbs go on, and they go, yeah, it turns out this like the problem is very similar. Sure, there's some unique deployment challenges, or there's unique operations considerations, um, but you're talking about some of the smartest, most driven people in the world on both sides. Like you can figure out these problems, and that I think gave me the confidence to basically broker those conversations. And you introduced me to so many different types of companies that I started to kind of, I had developed a skill that, and I learned this from you, that there's actually an incredible value in these two seemingly disparate entities. And if you can find that, if you can put those two things together, you can actually find and create a lot of value. And what I sought to do from that experience was go to the startups and say, hey, look, your core IP is actually this. I know you're going to market and you're saying that this is your value proposition, but the core value of what you produce is this. And there's a lot of other use cases that you're probably not aware of. So bringing those two things together has created a lot of serendipity and a lot of value as well.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah. And so it felt like that was a really then natural transition for you to go and work at Shield AI. I remember when you were kind of making that jump. And tell me a little bit about the business development role there. And then, like, you kind of went on to do some other really interesting things within the business there as well. But would love to hear about like what that initial role looked like for you.
Yeah, after a career in special operations where everything's a no-fail mission, you're on alert, you're responding to these incredibly hard problems. You think that you have a sense for moving fast, and then you get into startups where, and I had, in the 2 months that I spent with you, I got to see it outside looking in, but I wasn't like actually a part of it. So you don't get to see like the frenetic chaos of a startup every day. But I got to see it at Shield when on a Thursday, one of my classmates from the Air Force Academy reached out to me and said, "Hey, I saw you just did this defense ventures thing. Have you ever thought about a startup? And I'm going to Shield AI. You should take a look at it." So he's like, we have a conversation. He goes, "I'll introduce you to the founder." So on a Thursday, I talked to my classmate. On a Friday, I talked to the founder. On a Saturday, he bought me a plane ticket. I flew out Sunday, and by the end of the day, Monday, they put a job offer in front of me. And it just blew my mind because I'd heard all these stories about long interview cycles and hiring processes, and I just I had this like fear of having to answer the like how many golf balls could fit in a 747, like if you want to work at a tech company, and it was very much a hey, look, you have this like very unique skill set, you have this unique experience, we want to leverage that, and like, do you think you could do that here at this company? And it was like, I really liked the fact that I was able to stay close to the mission that I care about. And I was able to learn a really cool technology like artificial intelligence and put those two things together. So I was a business unit of one, director of business development. They basically said, hey, take a year, 12 months to ramp. Like you have no quota. We expect you just to learn about artificial intelligence, map the market, and then, in year two is when we expect you to start converting on some of that. And like most things in business, your network is where you can source a lot of opportunity. And within the first quarter, I got one of my friends from one of these units said, "Hey, I saw you're working at Shield AI now. You should apply to this program." And yeah, he's like, "It's $1 million contract. It's not that much." And I was like, "Okay." So I applied to it. And we get it. We get a
Wow.
$1 million contract. So I go back and I was like, "Hey guys, I got this $1 million contract. It's not that much." And they're like, "How did you just close $1 million deal in like a quarter? Your first quarter? Like what happened there?" And it was like, it was kind of hard to explain, um, because it was just like because I had no frame, I had no training, I had no framework, but it was a series of things like that that sort of snowballed. and turned that business unit into orders of magnitude more growth, which really put Shield AI on the map in the Air Force and the rest of the DoD.
That's amazing. And I know that while you were there, you then moved over to being based out of Washington for a little bit. I'm assuming like that's like a was there like there's a proximity to decision making that is helpful with that, and yeah, like that came with a different role as well, is my understanding. Tell me a little bit more about that.
During the first year, so we did the first deal, and during the first year, I'm simultaneously out trying to capture opportunities, and I'm also trying to build a go-to-market strategy, and I have no idea what a go-to-market strategy is. But I essentially identified that like in a build versus buy decision, it's going to take the time constant on build is going to be much longer time to value than if we just go acquire a company. So I came back and I was like, hey, these guys that just won the DARPA Alpha Dogfight trials where like AI was basically flying two F-16s in a dogfight, and like this company won like 5-0, like every time they beat a human at dogfighting. I was like, hey, what if we just I think I was like, hey, we should work with these guys. And then they were like, well, why don't we just buy them? And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was even on the table. And they're like, hey, go do some diligence. And I was like, okay, well, I remember at GGV what like diligence sort of looks like. So I go start trying to pull some numbers. I end up writing this memo, and they're like, hey, why don't you brief this to the board? And I'm like, okay, I was a pilot. I've briefed general officers. I have no idea what a board of directors is, but I go in, I kind of tell them what I think. And after the board meeting, the CEO comes to me, he goes, hey, do you think you can do this? And of course, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, if I can do this or not, but I don't know what I don't know. So in my mind, it's like I've built the case. I think I can execute on this. He goes, okay, we're gonna do this deal. You need to move to DC to go like do the integration. I was like, okay, I guess that's just what you do. So I got on a plane, I go to DC, and if the acquisition was incredible, that the team in Heron System was fantastic, and that really catalyzed the growth of that business unit in a way that we would have taken a lot longer to do. But it also opened my eyes to the seat of power, being in Washington D.C., where you're a 5-minute metro from the Pentagon, where the labyrinth of DoD decision making and acquisition, procurement dollars are flowing. So I got exposed to a lot of very unique things in the market very early.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. There's a argument that I've been making that I've had mixed reviews on how it's been received, but there's an argument I've been making that it really makes sense for like the people that are out in the market, and like having the partnerships and like kind of these types of strategy conversations to also be having the M&A conversations as well. And I think like historically that was the setup, and at some point in tech it kind of shifted over to either being on like the finance side, which really doesn't make much sense, or on the product side, but like having people with a business mind out in the market, and like talking to basically like trying to find ways to drum up business, whether it's like through partners, through referrals, through like by hook or by crook, you need to find
Sure.
deals, right? And then you're like, oh, this is something that would help us win more deals, or this is something that our customers are asking for, and it's like I think that it makes a ton of sense that that would live with someone like you, and that you would be able to go and run with something like that, which is like just an awesome story, and really really cool to hear. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about I'm definitely not an expert in any way, shape, or form on this space. I told you when we were doing the like the prep for this that I wanted to be in the Air Force when I was a kid, and so I have like a little bit of a natural interest, and I take my kids to the Museum of Flight a lot, but that's about where my knowledge caps. But I have observed that the business model, like the cost plus model around working with outside partners, is seems to be evolving. And if you look at companies like Palantir and Anduril and SpaceX and a bunch of other companies, like they're really, and there's like a ton of really cool hard tech companies out of El Segundo that are popping up that are getting government funding. It does feel like there's a bit of a moment in time where the government's like bringing tech companies and innovative companies more into the fold, or whether I don't know whether it's happening more, or whether just like the PR is getting better. And one of the things that I was listening to an interview with Palmer Luckey recently. He's one of the founders of Anduril, and he was saying, they spent about half or more on marketing and PR than as on product development. And in the past, like tech companies spend everything on product development, and he was saying like educating folks in the defense space and like securing those budgets, they spend a ton on marketing, and that's like a real big part of their efforts. So I'd love to hear, like, this is like my galaxy brain high level observation, and I don't know whether there's any truth to it, but obviously given that you're more involved in this space, I'd love to hear first, like, hey, is that a fair observation? Is there an evolving environment at the moment? Are there more opportunities for companies to like kind of become vendors for government? And then also, like, after that, would love to talk to you about some of the approaches that these companies have taken in order to be really successful there, because it seems like they've kind of done something we talked about at the start of this as well, like the primes, and how a lot of the procurement and contracts were dominated by those primes, and it seems to be that that's also evolving a little bit as well. So I'd love to just hear your perspectives on that, and kind of dig in there.
Yeah, I think you've made an incredibly astute observation, and there's first principles. The first principle in defense go to market is that the best product does not win. The best go to market strategy wins. Now you have to have a sufficiently good product in order for your go to market strategy to be credible. But very often we see that in the procurement process, the best, most innovative, coolest thing is not the one that they actually end up buying, and that frustrates a lot of founders who have spent their life's work building the best product they possibly can, and they're just like, I don't know why I'm not getting any traction here, and it's because you have the largest economic buyer on the planet. The DoD alone spends over $800 billion a year. And that's not to say the entirety of the U.S. government, but inside of that $800 billion, about 80% of that is for what's called sustainment. So like everything that they've already paid for, they have to continue to maintain and operate. And then of the discretionary funds, what are they going to buy next? What are they going to do research and development on? The funnel narrows very, very quickly. So if you're a small business and you're trying to sell into the government, you're competing over increasingly small portions of the pie. And if you know that the addressable market is huge, but the market that you can actually sell into is relatively small, and you're not going to get paid the value that the commercial provider would, but because the market is super sticky and it has this massive upside, like how much are you willing to spend on go to market? And that is a really hard question to answer if you have never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think that Anduril is one of the 5 unicorn defense tech companies. You've back in the day we had the FANG companies. In defense tech we have the Sharp companies. So you have Shield AI, Hawkeye 360, Anduril, Rebellion, Epirus, and Palantir. And so those are like the startups. So there's one outlier out there, and that's SpaceX. So SpaceX is now a $187 billion company. They are more valuable than Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, crazy.
Which is incredible. But when you think about those other 5 defense tech startups that have achieved unicorn status, they are still less than 1/100th of the 5 defense primes market cap.
Yeah.
So Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Boeing. Yeah, the defense tech companies are just tiny.
Yeah.
So they have to invest an incredible amount to even get the airtime that they need and the attention to even compete for these tiny little pools. But one of the things I think is very interesting is, when you look at a company like Anduril and Palantir, like look at their acquisition strategy, look at their partnership strategies. That is a a way to be successful, particularly early on, so you don't have to devote your precious resources to all the overhead that sales and marketing requires. You can focus really on product development, but you can leverage some of these hyperscalers or channel partners to be successful in this really complex market.
Yeah, I love that. And that's where I was going to go next. Because whenever I hear, hey, we're spending a ton of money on marketing, I'm always like, there's a partner opportunity here. It's like
Yeah,
someone else has already done this work. That's where my mind always goes. It's like someone else has already built that relationship, or someone else has already built that trust, and like, and if you build a relationship with, it's probably easier to build a relationship with them than it is with the Pentagon. And so, yeah, like, tell me your observation of channel partners, resellers, or, like, I know that you've been doing some consulting yourself for founders, but like consulting companies that help people work with the DoD or the government more broadly. I know almost zero about the partnerships landscape when it comes to that kind of stuff, and I'm really interested to understand, is that a thing, and like how evolved is it as well? So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
yeah, it is. It is probably the most, well, it's hard to qualify the government versus commercial in terms of maturity, but a little history here might be helpful. After the Cold War, America expected a peace dividend, and they said, "Hey, we are going to spend, one third of what we were spending before, like historic highs, trying to, win the Cold War." And they said, "Okay, we are going to recapitalize some of that. We're only going to spend a third." So we had all of these defense companies, hundreds of defense companies, and they, the Department of Defense, the secretary called a meeting, and he said, "All right, everybody show up." And they literally called it the Last Supper because they hosted everyone for dinner. And they said, "Okay, we're not going to spend that much anymore. This is carte blanche to go out and start consolidating.
Mhm.
We're telling you right now, we don't want you to go out of business. We realize that people have jobs. Like, we need to continue to provide for the welfare. So here's the signal, like, go organize yourselves." And that massive defense industrial base consolidated to those five primes that I described earlier. So that's why we have the market that we have today. Yeah, it's incredibly hard because you don't have like a very efficient, market dynamic to work with. You have very few competitors, but what that has done is created a very natural channel partnership opportunity. That, when the government pays Lockheed Martin to build the F-35, they're not paying Lockheed Martin to go turn the wrenches and develop the panels. Lockheed Martin is going to go subcontract to hundreds of different vendors, and the F-35 is famous for having, a vendor in every state, so that the Congress can, get more money for their people. But that system is very well organized. It's slow and it's bureaucratic, and everything has to be fair and open competition. And you've got to write these long proposals that have to be formatted, and the systems are like from the 90s. But it's very mature. It is a well trodden path, which makes it also very competitive.
Mhm.
So what makes venture backed companies very unique is that, they are not doing what, the requirement process where the government tells you, say, "Hey, these are the 10 things we want," and then everybody kind of competes and it goes to the lowest bidder. What venture companies are trying to do is go look for the hardest problem. Where's the gap that they have? Let's go solve that problem, find a way and, create product market fit, and either disrupt or displace an incumbent or create a new place in the market. And what we're seeing with this $800 billion budget is that, of that sustainment of the old programs, there are new capabilities that are coming through this venture-backed pipeline that the DoD didn't really even comprehend or didn't think would be delivered on a timeline this soon. So they're trying to find ways to capture that.
Mhm.
But there's just not that many people that understand this new, different pathway. Lots of people understand the big machine, that work with the primes. Very few people understand how to successfully run the gauntlet and survive. And so that's primarily what I work on, because both strategies are viable, and you can do there's a hybrid strategy that should be considered, but it all is predicated on partnerships.
Yeah, and I've heard that being referred to as building for the mission.
Yeah,
That's how I think maybe Paul Malucky I heard say that like Anduril, they build for the mission, which is like they're building stuff that maybe isn't, that maybe like people don't know that they need yet, basically, and they're going to go and like really pitch it. And so tell me a little bit about like when you're talking to founders and they're thinking about these strategies, right? Okay, like do we go into this like grueling procurement process either through the primes or directly potentially, or do we like build for the mission and try and like kind of circumvent some of that process? And I think, you know, again, like SpaceX as an exception, but like they've done a really fantastic job of that, right? Like where they kind of like shoehorned themselves, even shocking, like by through lawsuits as well, but like, you know,
Yeah.
really like shoehorned themselves into what was the best thing for the country. Well, like, how do you talk about that with founders? And I guess also like, how do you even help people assess whether there is an opportunity for them to build for the DoD as an example?
Yeah. You mentioned SpaceX and the lawsuit. So the space, for those who don't know, SpaceX had to sue the government in order to win their first big contract with the government. Because the government just didn't know how to procure something like this. Because they're trying to push their way in. And so they said, "Hey, look, you need to innovate your procurement method so that you can buy products from a company like us." And the only way they were able to do that successfully was by suing the government. Also, Palantir did the exact same thing.
Really?
And yeah,
Yeah.
so not surprising that two of the six multi-billion-dollar defense tech startups had billionaire founders and had to sue the government to get their contract. But the good news is that has paved a way for these next generation of startups to go and enter the defense market, because now people understand that there needs to be another procurement pathway. They understand that you don't have to have a requirement in order to get a really attainable solution, and that's primarily what I impart upon the founders that I work with, is that like if you're going to go to market in defense, you need to understand the timeline, and you need to understand the process. You don't have to understand the whole thing, but you need to understand that it's an uphill battle. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be like getting a bunch of $50,000 contracts. It's going to be you're going to spend 18 months trying to get a multi-million, $10 million contract. But when you do, that 10 can very easily turn into 100. And it's once you're on that contract and you're performing well and you're doing all the things that you went and told your investors you were going to raise money to go achieve, it's very sticky. So the thing that this may, for those that don't know, this is going to sound insane, but the way the DoD thinks about budgeting is basically on a 10-year horizon. So on any given year, the DoD is looking out 5 years and saying, okay, Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Space Force, what do you need to go do your mission, for the next 5 years? And like try to predict what the world is going to be like in 5 years, and then also try to figure out what you need to buy and how much money that's going to cost. Like, good luck. But the DoD does it every year, and when they come up with that plan, they're essentially kind of that's their forecast. But the good news is most of that is public record.
Mm-hmm.
So you have companies that want to enter the market have direct insight into the budgets that the services are requesting and what they're requesting it for. Now, there is, of course, a classified budget, and there are classified requirements that you're never going to get the full picture. However, there is a way, and part of the methodology is like understanding how money has been spent historically, understanding where money is being requested for the future, and then trying to create that critical path to bring your product or service to market, to the right people at the right time. And that is really, really hard. It's not like doing primary market research and in 3 months go and say, okay, like this is how we're going to go do it. Not only do you have to do the market research and make sense out of this really complex market, you then have to pursue a simultaneous campaign against capturing opportunities that are on the table today, because the deal cycles are so long. You also need to do business development to go shape opportunities for the subsequent opportunity after you win the near-term ones. And then you have to go shape basically that budget request process to say, hey, you don't know about it because it doesn't exist yet, but in 2 years, we're going to have a game-changing product. And in 3 years from then, we're going to be a public company. So like you need to find a way to to request the money that's going to be able to buy the solution, the enterprise solution that we're going to have. So you have to do all that at the same time. And so not only is it complex, it's resource intensive. And every 4 years, the government changes. So it's just constantly changing, evolving game that you have to play, which makes it really hard. But if you can figure that out and you can execute a strategy, you can win really big.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that that is the thing that makes this whole thing so compelling, right? Is that yes, it's really difficult, and also the payoffs are gigantic. You know,
Huge.
like, even you don't need to be a SpaceX, even if you're like a nuts and bolts manufacturer on that, F-35 project. That's like a huge piece of business for you. And so yeah, it provided that you are the right fit for something like this, the outcomes can be gigantic. And so like, how should people be thinking about that? Like, most of the folks, I hope there are some engine manufacturers out there that are listening to this right now. But most of the folks that listen to this show are heads of VPs of partnerships, mostly working at software companies, some hard tech companies, but mostly software. And I think for a lot of these folks, as an example, I'm on the board of a cybersecurity company called Cyber Fortress. It's like data protection, data storage, and backup. And we constantly find that like local government, city council, these are some of our best customers on a regular basis. And we go through these procurement processes. I don't think that if that wasn't already happening at this company when I came on the board, that wouldn't have been an idea that I had
Mm,
where it's like, hey, like we should go and approach like Maryland city government about like using our data backup service, right? And going through that procurement process. I would have said that sounds like a nightmare. But it's a really, really
it
good
is.
piece of yeah, it's business and it's a nightmare. The like this is just I think it's not it's out of left field. It's like out of the box thinking for a lot of folks that match that persona. And so like, how should people be? Like you said, there is like the public, how you present your product to the market for like customer, like your consumer. And then there's like, this is the IP of your product. And there are potentially some really interesting applications for this product in like the DoD or elsewhere. Like, how should founders or business development people be assessing, hey, is there a play for us in this space? And like thinking about like scoring that opportunity versus how much work it would be to validate it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a not a shameless plug, but I would say like if you want to validate the market and you don't have any experience in it, don't try to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to learn a new language and then do like complex calculus and or math. Like, it's probably too much to try to like quickly wrap your head around. So finding people who already understand that can simplify the complexity, help orient you to where you understand your technology or your product, where your market is, and then try to find the corollaries. That is typically the low cost, low risk way to even assess whether the defense market is viable for you. The second thing is there are it's all open source. Everything, all the solicitations are on the internet, so you could peruse those things and try to find out where you think you might be a good fit, and then do the standard business development stuff where you call up Lockheed Martin and you say, hey, this is what we're building. Is this something you could use? And they can help bring you in and then shepherd you through the process. That is a little bit. That's obviously takes more time, more resources. There's a kind of a unique pathway through if for the small businesses out there that if they it's called small business innovation research, SBIR,
Mm-hmm.
where if you have less than 500 people, you can apply to these things, and they're basically research and development contracts. And particularly for the venture-backed startups that are getting in the game when they're thinking about when they're thinking about whether they should go to market in the Defense Department, typically that's where they'll start because they can use their venture-backed money as leverage to bring their product to a certain level of maturity, and then use the government funding to kind of match and tailor that solution for the government use case. So you're basically getting paid to do the feasibility assessment and do the prototype. And then if you're successful, the government will give you a contract to continue to produce that solution, your product plus the unique bespoke integration, at scale, which is, that's an incredible way to do it. The other thing I was thinking about, just in terms of the different pathways, the DoD is one market. The U.S. government is a massive market, and it seems counterintuitive, but the government actually looks to these businesses that want to sell into the government to see if they have commercialization already, because they're purely assessing for risk. If they give a company a $10 million contract, are they going to be able to deliver on that?
Yeah.
Or are they a 5-person shop that does R&D but is never going to be able to produce something at scale? That's a huge concern for the government. They can kill companies with capital. So if you can demonstrate that you have commercial traction, even at the early stages, you guys have design partnerships or something, like even that is sufficient, or you're able to bring capital, private capital partnerships to the table. That is incredibly compelling to the government, especially for those who don't have past performance, which is one of the evaluation criteria. So there are lots of different ways to do business with the government, but I think the kind of the top ways are working through established channel partner like a prime, looking at some of the innovation pathways through things like SBIR, and of course, you can get oriented to those things very quickly by talking to an expert who can help point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Yeah, and as we come up on time, which I'm very sad about, because I love talking about this stuff, and yeah, could chat for a lot longer about it. It's a great opportunity to kind of, you are one of those experts, and I was really pleased to learn that you're kind of helping folks out with this. I think that's a really compelling opportunity for partnerships people. Like if you're in a if you're a BD partnerships leader within a company and you're tasked with finding new partners that can help you break into new markets, like this is probably an area you should be exploring, provided that your technology loosely is in the right field. And so what's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Forrest, to have that conversation?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the easiest way. You can email me at forrest@evergreenindustries.tech. The one piece of maybe closing thought advice that I'd offer is there's lots of people out there that will tell you that they know a guy or they've got a playbook. Those are red flags. If someone tells you that they've got it figured out, they certainly do not, and they're probably sub-optimizing, which means you're not going to get the outcome that you want. The people that understand how complex this is, the people who are willing to wade in and really understand your technology, your business, and try to find the right match, that I think that's the right approach. Because it is hard, but it's not impossible. Mm-hmm. And I think the point about building for the mission is really important. Now, if you think defense is going to save your business, it probably won't. But if you're compelled to solve really hard problems and service customers who are incredibly grateful to have new and innovative technology and solutions to go do their missions, the Defense Department is a great place to go. And you will never be more satisfied with a sale or a deployment of your product than when you get to see these folks who are out there putting it on the line every day, working with your product, and so grateful to have it.
Amazing. I absolutely love that. That is a fantastic way to conclude the time today. So Forrest, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
So awesome getting to chat with you, and hope to make this an in-person thing soon, because I miss getting to hang out with you. But thank you so much for the time and for sharing your experience with everyone.
Thanks, Ty. Good to be here.